It's been about 10 years or so that you guys have all been competing against each other at the highest level, setting the standards for competition for the best part of a decade now. What was the moment where you recognized this is going to be the guy I'm going to have to battle with if I want to be the best in the business? Eli?
Well, for me, in my professional career, when I started it, me and Kenny were racing each other basically all that time. So I've been around Ken basically my whole racing career, and then Chad was the guy I looked up to, and honestly I studied as I was coming up, and he was the group that I was watching, and idolizing. So and then all of a sudden you're on the track together, and it's kind of I don't know. It's a big deal at first, and then you got to try to want to beat him. So it's a pretty cool feeling.
Yep.
And now we're all back together.
Yeah.
Yep.
For you?
Yeah, and back in 2011, so the whole American Supercross thing to me happened so quick, because even just a year before that, I still felt like a kid, and I know that my goal and my path was always laid that I was going to come over, race for Roger DeCosta, or go to US Supercross. But it always seemed so far away. So then it was happening super quick, and I had zero Supercross experience, right? So in 2011, I had a rough go at it at first, kind of figured it out, but even in my first year, I actually rode the 350 in the big bike class, and it was still a little bit like starstruck. I'm like, holy crap, like I'm racing some guys that I have watched, or we have watched for so long, right? And that was a feeling that, I'm sure other riders at this point probably have racing against us, but it's just something you'll never forget. And now being back at it again, it's rad.
Chad, for you, you were one of those young guys coming up. Then you were the established star with the young guys, biting at your heels. So, and these two were them. How was that?
These two in particular were just really fun, because I think even when you're at the top and you're racing, you're still pretty aware of what's happening and who's coming. And because I think that as a student of the game, you're always watching, like you always watch the younger kids, and these two in particular they showed such, high levels of skill at a very, very young age. I mean, Eli won his first professional race. And as far as like competing against them, memories that I have would be, I'm not sure if it was Eli's first race, but I think it might have been Eli's first win was like Phoenix 13-ish. I think maybe. For some reason that race stands out. I don't know if it was his first ever big bike win or if it was just, but the track that weekend, the skill of it, and then Kenny's first race where him and I went head to head at one of the Anaheims, I think that was 14, was just kind of like that coming of, it was a surreal moment because, like I obviously knew Ken from GPs and coming in, and then you've had a similar background, racing GPs, coming to America, and that success and the trajectory that it's at. So yeah, just kind of in a weird way, like I watched them also as young kids and their skills and what they did and how they were fast, and because you're always trying to evolve, you're always trying to stay ahead of the game.
So is Chad one of those guys you always wanted the autograph from? Did you have a poster of him on the wall? Anything like that?
Definitely. I mean, for me, watching American Supercross, it was just the style that stood out, right? Like there were always 3-4 guys, and I mean, Chad was definitely one of them that I would go on PlayStation and just replicate everything.
Eli?
Oh yeah, Chad was like I said earlier. It was like that was the group that we watched. So.
I think it's really hard to pick just one out
Yeah.
in that era, right? Because
Yeah.
there were 3 guys. It was them 3, and they were all on a pedestal. Like it was.
Of course, you're talking about
amazing.
Chad, Ricky, and
Ricky,
James.
and James. Yeah.
So, having watched those guys and having interacted with them when you were very young and seeing how they treated you, did you learn from that as far as now that you guys are at that pinnacle, how you treat younger riders coming up? Good, bad, or indifferent?
I mean,
I personally didn't have a ton of interaction with them at the time, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. 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 It's just, I don't know.
I think it's more the feeling, right? Like I remember that, and you were there too when the first time. I didn't even know about it, but my parents and Eric Gabors at that point, they surprised. We went to a farm in Tallahassee, and it was Ricky's farm. At that point, I didn't know. I just saw Supercross track, but I was starting to ride and whatnot, and then Ricky rolls out, and I'm like, that number 4 looks very familiar, right? So then I actually got to talk to him for the first time. I still have video somewhere of it. And just the way they treated us, like I remind myself constantly when little kids come up, and even in tough times, like it's hard to always be happy-go-lucky, right? But that feeling, or you will always remember the first time you meet that person, and you know how they treated us. So I always remind myself, and that's why we love the fans so much. And you know, we used to be that big, and when their eyes open up and they get starstruck in a way, that's a very special feeling. So we want to make that moment special for them.
You're going to have an opportunity to do that now globally. That's pretty impactful for what you can do.
Yeah, it will feel different, I feel like, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
In a good way.
So Ken, what makes competing against Eli such a challenge?
Well, obviously we know over the years, you know, from raw speed to fitness level, and you know, he's obviously shown that he's very consistent over multiple years. So very tough nut to crack, you know. And me, on the other hand, I've had a little bit of a different story lately, but nonetheless, I'm trying every day to get back to that point. So obviously he cleaned up everything this year, and that speaks for itself.
Eli, for you, every year it's like, okay, you're going to have to beat Ken to win the title again, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So how tough is it to race against Ken Roczen?
Well, I mean, for me, Kenny always comes out firing right away, and then I'm in scramble mode, you know. So, and that's the way it's been, and he's been, you know, absolutely one of my toughest competitors from the beginning, you know. Just there every year.
I think we have such different body types where I'm a very fast twitch, like sprinter, like immediately, and it doesn't even come hard to me. Like some people really have to practice that intensity right away that I feel like I don't have to practice at all. It just comes
Going
naturally
0 to
me.
100 kind of thing.
Exactly, like wide open right away. That comes super natural to me, and I feel like in that way we could be a little bit different that way. It might be a little harder for him, but obviously I have other challenges, and we're same, right? Like speed-wise and all this stuff, but so different at the same time. And you just never know what can happen, because I've had some really good years too where I didn't have that dip down in the end, and it's been hard for me to get there, but I think we're so different and unique in our own ways that makes it tough to battle each other.
So if he's good going 0 to 100 right out of the gate, where's your strength? Is it long-term?
I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, but I've had seasons where I don't figure it out early enough either, so.
Fun of the sport, you never know.
Yeah,
right?
you never know. You never know, you know.
Yeah, adaptability, I guess.
Yeah.
Do what
Can't
you gotta
underestimate anyone.
And you're battling a lot of other riders too that are really
Right.
good.
Yep.
do. And then there's this guy. So what's going to be the toughest part about racing against Chad Reed?
At 40.
Experience.
Yeah, experience, man.
Old
Man,
age and
looking at
treachery?
that, just looking at the jersey's intimidating. I'll tell you what. Like,
Is it really?
that's what I think back to when I first started racing them, and you know, when you look at Reed on the back of the jersey, or you look at Stewart, whoever those guys, it's like the intimidation factor. It's like you're already beat when you get to the line. So you got to get used to that feeling.
Even though he's an old guy?
Yeah.
Even then.
So, Chad, these guys are the quote-unquote young guys, but they're not that young anymore. I'm not saying they're old, not like you, but they're older than they were when you first started racing with them. So they've got a lot of that old age and treachery now. They've learned a few tricks themselves. So how tough is it going to be to beat these guys at this stage as it might have been when they got started?
You know, they don't know it yet, but I think that they're at the highest level that they can be at, and there's still more to come. You know, I think that good and bad about our sport is you start hitting that 28 years old and people start dubbing you old or experienced. And it's just because of the drop away of the guys, you know. Brayton just retired as well, so now a good portion of the older generation is out, and so then therefore it starts falling onto that next, you know, 30 to, you know, 20, 29, 28 years old. And for me, I didn't feel like I even knew who I was until I was 28, 29, 30 years old. You know, you're just kind of in this crazy world of, you know, racing dirt bikes and, you know, each of these guys have children now, and I think that at that point your life starts to phase in a different way. And so I see a year of, like, Eli in particular, of just winning everything. And if he has the right mindset, that doesn't end anytime soon. I don't believe that, I honestly would say the strongest, toughest, best, full-rounded self that I felt was 32 years old. So age is really just a number of, like, mentally what you think of that number, and everybody's different. Even at 40, like, I enjoy to race my dirt bike, I don't enjoy that grind every weekend anymore. But like an opportunity like this and jumping in and racing the likes of these two guys brings such joy and excitement to me, and I think you have a different perspective on it after children and all these things. So I think that they're going to be strong guys, like, I look at them and I think they answered it correctly. Kenny is so fast, and so the raw fastness, like, he's a James Stewart, like, gate drop go kind of guy. Eli a little bit more rivaling Ricky, just super solid. And you can't sleep on him, because when he finds comfort, he can whole shot and go like James, like Kenny. So he's dangerous, right? And I somehow fall in the middle of, I'm probably a little bit more like, Ricky and Eli, in the fact that, like, when I have comfort, then it's all there. The speed's there, the comfort's there, the endurance is there. I've never struggled when comfortable, but when not comfortable is when it's hard, And I think all three of us can probably relate to, because I've studied each career, we all are at our best when comfortable with the motorcycle and environment around us,
What happened at 32 that all of a sudden everything was at its best for you?
It's hard to say, but I would say that, my advice a little bit in a weird way to them is, like, a lot of the noise, the chatter in the background starts to get quieter. I think that you start to acknowledge who you are, what you have achieved, and now what your position in the world is. And you start to become a little more comfortable in that. It's not about, answering to all these negative things and proving yourself right or them wrong. I think it's more and more just realizing, like, I'm good. Like, if it all ends today, I sit here tied on 44 wins with this guy, 2 championships, all's okay. Like, my name in the books, as they call it, I'm good. I sleep at night just fine.
As you should, as you all should.
Let me jump in there real quick. I just feel like the stigma around our sport for the longest time was like, oh, you can't win after 27, which is foolish, because in a lot of other sports, people hit their prime in their late 20s, physically, mentally, like, all that, I feel like just gets stronger and stronger. So I think with our sport being old school on the training side of things, people have fried themselves out, and that's why it's gotten that stigma of, like, oh, you need to be in that time frame to do all your wins, but then they retire, and you have so many years left where good things could happen, and I'm right there where I think the prime is still coming, physically, mentally, and obviously it's changed. You're 30. Are you 30 yet?
In November.
In November, so almost
1 month.
there. And obviously,
He's on the
I
downhill.
feel like you've been better. You've been better this
over.
year than ever. So
You're
I
done.
think the stuff's all still coming, and it, like you said, it's really just a number. There's so much, talking about comfort, and you have to be comfortable to be able to go, like, and at this level at least, every little bit matters, right? And everybody always says, oh, you can win on anything, you can win on a crap bike, and I'm like, that's not true. I don't feel like it is true, not at this level anymore. You have to be comfortable to be able to be special, or at least for me. I'm the same with you. If I'm comfortable, I'm super good, but if it's not, then it's not there. That's hard.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've been fortunate to watch you guys all, well, not you, you were already there, watch you guys basically grow up and achieve what you've become in this sport, and it's been a real pleasure to do that. And now, as Chad mentioned, you're at different stages of your lives now. You've got families, you've got things happening away from the racetrack that takes away some of that focus you would think maybe on racing, or changes your perspective on it. At the same time, the record books state that you guys are the greatest in the world at what you do. So where are you? Kenny, you pointed out that you don't think you're far from done as far as what you can achieve on a dirt bike, but how have you changed your approach to getting those goals hit?
It's really listening less to the noise, like what Chad says. Having a family, you're occupied pretty much all day, but the fun part is that you can put the sport aside and think about some other things. At least for me, that's what works the best. Where beforehand, when you're in your mid-20s, early 20s, and it is all about the sport, like I feel like Chase Sexton is there at the moment, and I've been there before too. Like, it is a constant grind, and it's constantly moto, and I feel like I prefer it the way it is right now, where you can do some other things, because the next day I wake up and it feels like I've been away from the sport, and I've kind of was winding down a little bit from training and all of that, and then you fire it all back up. Where back in the day, I always stayed a little bit in that aggressive state, and I feel like it just hurt me at times.
Eli, the current lifestyle that you're in, family, relationships, all that, do you think that's going to help extend your career going forward because it puts you in a different mindset, like Kenny's talking about?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And going even back to the age thing, it is like everyone kind of beats it into your head, and you're just like, why? Like, this is our prime right now. And yeah, family wise, there's nothing better than having kids and having family around. So there's good separation there, but it also makes those track days, I don't know, like you realize how much you enjoy everything. So I don't know where I'm going with that. I've got jet lag brain right now, but
it gets tough too, right? But like,
yeah.
it's different. It's just a different, bit of a different feeling having a family and
yeah.
doing this for different reasons, just for the pure joy of competing.
I'm going to take two older groups here that have done some interesting things lately. One is the Rolling Stones, and one is Tom Brady. And I remember in an interview, somebody asked Mick or Keith Richards, they said, how long can you do this whole rock and roll thing? And they said, we don't know. We're doing it for the first time now. So we don't know where this can go, but we'll let you know when we get there. And Tom Brady's kind of doing the same thing, isn't he, in American football? So do you guys kind of see it the same way for yourselves, that I'm not beholden to any limit because I don't know where I can go yet?
Yeah, I think of it as the journey,
Yeah.
I think it's not good to think about like the end point, It's really about the journey along the way. So
Same for you, Kenny?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the toughest time is probably still coming because our lives with the sport has been wide open, kind of. And then when all of that stops, I feel like is when most athletes struggle the most. I'm fearing that a little bit too. Granted, I'm a busybody, right? Like, I feel like I have a lot of hobbies and stuff, but we've seen it before even with Ryan Dungey coming back. You're over it at times. You want to retire, and then 6 months later, you're like, what the heck did I do? So I'm fearing that a little bit, if I'm being honest. And I've been there many times where I'm like, man, I don't know if I can still do this because I've tried so freaking hard, and I am not where I want it to be, and I've been held back by stuff. But I sometimes need a little reality check, and then I want to continue to do this. And hopefully a few years down the road, I can kind of be like, man, I'm glad I kept going because good things are still coming.
Chad, to Kenny's point, there's a great line from the movie The Godfather. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. Here you are, getting ready to line up in a gate again just when you thought you were out. But to Kenny's point there too, it's very hard when this is all you've done for your whole life to finally say, I'm done. Even though you're good with the stats and all that, it is hard to walk away from something that is a passion. It is your life.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is there's really not a huge future in retirement. I think that's the best way to say it. I've heard, look at Tom Brady. He lasted, 2 weeks? Yeah. So he was even gnarlier than I was. I at least lasted 2 years. For me, my retirement came at a great time. It happened in 2020. The world stopped. And then when it slowly started to come back, it wasn't at a level that was fun to me. The whole masking and the restrictions and, limited fans and the access to fans and, speaking and communicating with the rest of the industry. all those things for me is what this sport's about. And so that transition of what Kenny's talking about is real, you know, but I can honestly say it didn't hit me because it wasn't like I was, you know, like it wasn't like the world kept marching on at the level that you knew it. And so for me, it was a really fortunate time for me to kind of wind down, reset. Kids went BMX racing, then rode some dirt bikes. So that kind of phase. Like for me, just like I'm still a student of the game, honestly. You know, like I love it. I watch it every weekend on TV. I'm the ridiculous guy that pays for the apps, in some cases multiple apps, and watches it and fans out. And these kids are people, they're my friends, they're people that I respect. And so kind of just listening to the two of them speak, like each individual's, you know, understanding of where they're at in life is so you can relate to it, you know? And so for me, it's just seeing somebody like Eli that's won everything, you know? I look at him going from Kawasaki to Yamaha, and as an outsider here, my opinion, is that I believe it's a sideways move, you know, from bike to bike. I don't believe one's better than the other. I think it's the environment that you create yourself, you know? You spend so many years at a team, and you go through those ups and downs and those life growths. And I think at a certain point, those people become family, and just like all family, they're easy to complain to, and sometimes those people have other lives and other things going on, and so your complaints are no longer at the top of their list of caring about it. And I think Kenny's in a similar situation. You know, he's been at Honda for a long time. I mean, look at the things that he's encountered, from his broken wrists to multiple broken wrists to multiple surgeries. And I think through that process, you know, they've had his back, but at some point, you've gone through it together. And sometimes you need a hard reset. And I just think that for me, as somebody that's been there, done it, and my advice is just, there's so much future ahead for both. It's just, it comes down to what you want to do, you know? And I love that part about our sport, because I think that our sport still has star power, and these two guys have star power. Like, for instance, Motocross of Nations 2 weeks ago, I watched a team celebrate, but I watched an individual that was a star, and then two individuals that were just boys, you know? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to the other two, but you see a guy that truly understood the history of the event, what it meant to him to win, and I think that the other two were just, it was a race, and they were fans. But it was fun for me to witness and see that come through on TV, and I think that it's cool. There's a lot of athletes in our sport, but few stars, and I'm happy to be sitting alongside two stars.
Big words.
Yeah.
It's got to make you feel pretty good for you guys to
That
hear that.
does, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
I can see you smiling over there, and it meant something, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I thought of Chad in that era, you know?
I lived a fun era.
Yeah.
Like I truly believe that, like, the era that I lived, like, I wouldn't change it. Like,
You do understand the reason why that was such a fun era is because you were a part of it.
Yeah, I think so. And then, you know, the other two,
We know so.
being James and Ricky, you know, you just think without one of them, the wins you could have and the titles you could have, you know. But with saying that, you move on from that in life, and then it's a fun conversation, not a bitter conversation, because there was years that you ended up on the wrong side of it, or the short end of it, you know, it felt like. But now it's like you look back, and the individuals who I had to take on are individuals that are all in that top 5, you know.
All Hall of Famers.
I'm tied for 4th, and will move to 5th next year, I'm sure. And I just think that every one of those guys, you know, whether it be Villapoto 4 straight, you know, Dunge 4 total titles, Eli at 2, going for a 3rd next year, tied with him on 44 wins, you know, James, Ricky, 48 wins for, you know, Ricky, 50 for James. And then I obviously caught the backside of Jeremy's career, you know, but just, yeah, like just real stars of the sport, and I got to race every one of them in all their different forms of their, where they fit it in.
Yeah.
Now I don't have any.
So you guys
Yeah.
are doing that together, and you've raced each other extremely hard over the years, but there's always been great respect, I feel, between the two of you on track and obviously off of it as well. Where did the respect develop? How did that come about? For those of us that will never do that, is it a conversation? Is it just something you observe with the other guy and you go, I think I have to respect him?
I think it's like, that this guy can beat me and you can't underestimate him. That's all it comes down to. And
character, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and character too. And just how they act as a racer and on the track and all that combined, So.
Kenny, the same with
yeah,
you?
I
huh?
think just the upbringing, we just know that they're right, and they have always been like that. And ultimately, Eli doesn't race that way. I don't race that way, and there's a lot of other greats that race each other with respect, race hard, but with respect. And then you just have these few that are different than us, right? And I think we were lucky to have so many good battles, but and both of us are not racing in a dirty way, and it makes sense, and it makes it a lot more fun that way. There's other riders where you really have to be careful about your leg not being broken in a corner, you know what I mean? So,
Who are you talking about? Come on.
yeah, no names are gonna be named.
You guys have both gone through some serious adversity in your careers coming up as well. Kenny, I don't know any athlete I've ever seen who's gone through the type of things that you've put your body through, that you've overcome and gotten back to the level that you have. It's remarkable. Chad has always been extremely gritty that way. What is it about pushing yourself to get through those adversities? Where does that come from?
Well, obviously I'm not the only one that's had heavy injuries. Eli, with both of his shoulders, is absolutely no joke. Unfortunately, mine just, my arm, like I feel like if I were to give Eli my arm and he'd ride, or like feel it out, it'd be like with the wrist brace, it'd be like, oh, I can't even ride that way. For me, it's gotten normal and I have no problems with it. My arms are actually super good. It's everything else that came with it, unfortunately. That's what I've been struggling. And I know we talk about it all the time, and I'm tired of it too. But I think about coulda, woulda, shoulda. If that wouldn't have happened, like where would I be? But at the same time, it is what it is. And
It's your story.
Most importantly, I am still trying to get back to my personal highest level, and it's been a bit of a challenge, but I'm still changing things around in hopes to get there, so it's not giving up. And at that point, when these injuries happen, and especially the first one, I was in a mindset of like, not that nobody can beat me, but I was just extremely physically strong, mentally strong, and I was young, really young, and I didn't have any aches and pains, and I just no issue with being tired or fatigued or anything, So then you purely focus on your training. You feel the gains that you're making, and that's where the mental strength and everything came from. And when I crashed and injured the first time, I was at the top of that game. So that made it a little bit easier. It took me a little bit, but not that long. It was a little bit easier for me to say, you know what, I'm doing this. And I think because I was so hard on myself and very vocal about coming back at the highest level, it held me accountable. And that's the only reason, because I didn't give myself any slack. I didn't want to. My brain didn't even go there, because then I would have just looked for excuses and would have been fine riding around in fifth, which I wasn't, and I'm still not. So I think it just takes a little bit of something. Everybody, of course, is different, but for me, that was the case. I was, I guess, lucky that all of this happened while I was at the top, because that's what helped me push through that and put that part behind me and just focus on trying to win more, and for the longest time it was just trying to get a main event win, which I have achieved. So those are all these goals. Never mind a championship. I haven't gotten a championship since, but there were a lot of goals after over 1,000 days of getting my first win back. Those are huge milestones in my life, and then going on to actually winning multiple races, and I still feel like I'm not done winning.
Eli, how about you?
You're going to have to.
Just accomplishing, getting over all the adversity through life. You and Kenny have been through some pretty big ones in your careers. How did you find the inner strength to do that?
Well, it's when you're a competitor and a racer, it's like you give yourself no option but to go forward, right? So it's like you're always trying to improve, always be better, and then if you injure yourself, it's just you put that behind you and you realize how much you love the sport. I realized that when I injured my shoulders in 2015, I'm like, man, this sucks being on the couch, man. I want to go race my dirt bike. So those situations you learn from, you build from, and for me, you find more love of the sport when you get put in those situations. So yeah, you push on.
Chet, I don't know if you guys realize it or not, but at times I think all three of you have probably been very inspirational for your fans that way, because they've seen you get, knocked down, beaten up, laying on the couch. Am I going to be able to go forward? And you guys always find a way to pick yourselves and go on. I always go back to Detroit with you that night. Next thing you know, you're being carted off to the hospital. Next thing you know, we turn around, here you are coming back, getting on your bike. It's like, are you kidding me? So you can really have a big impact on your fan base that way, not just standing on the top of the podium, but just rising to the occasion.
Yeah, it's hard to knock somebody down that ain't willing to stay down. I think that, like, for me, it's about how you're wired, right? Like, I think people at the highest level, once you've won, that's the hardest part of life is learning how to win. And I think that our sport is so, it's growing more and more common that everybody wants to have these happy-go guys, and they're great with social media, and they come across as great people, but they're not wired winners. Wired winners are hard to work with. They demand things. They expect things. This is what I see the transition in our sport and what's changing, is like just how easy, and everybody's like, oh yeah, but he's, he may not win, but he'll be there every weekend. And it's like, dude, let's go back to he's going to win at all costs. And if he does go down, he's going to bounce right back up and fight for it, And I think that winners are wired a certain way. You can teach a winner a lot of things, but you can't teach somebody that doesn't know how to win how to actually win. Like, it's a learning process, and it's a learned process at such a young age. And I think that's, again, what these two individuals beside me with their different paths and listening to Kenny's struggles, they're all just struggles, but he's mentally wired to win and to not give up on that winning, and I think that this hard reset for him is probably the most important part of his next move, because you can now say that that's done, acknowledge that it's happening, acknowledge the struggles, and then how do we next make the best way forward, and I think that's what's exciting for me as a fan of, like, okay, what is the next move, because I believe him when he says he's not done winning. I think he just needs to implement the ways to create it, and it's easy as that. It's how Tutu Motorsports was formed. A lot of people say it's the dumbest thing you ever did. It cost me millions of dollars, but I would say I will burn up that millions of dollars again tomorrow. It was the coolest thing I ever did. I created my own team, my own people that had my back, people that were willing to fight with me in the trenches. When you employ those people and you build that group around you, it's hard to take you down because you've got a good defense system around you.
Yeah. Okay, as we wrap this thing up, one last question for the three of you. So here we are in Cardiff, and the sport you've been around your whole life is going global and looking to expand to all these new markets. How is the excitement level of the sport growing into new regions, and knowing that you have a massive influence that has contributed to the overall growth and interest in Supercross? How do you feel about helping to take the sport to the next level?
I think for me, it's the opportunity to pack a passport and to go and see new people. For instance, yesterday we were doing some press and I was walking outside of the stadium. There's a whole street lined with WSX logos, and unfortunately not my picture, but Kenny's picture, all the way down the street. And I just think, how cool is that? Like, that is what our sport's about. And I it's hard to not acknowledge the situation that Kenny finds himself in the fact that I see a picture of an individual on a red motorcycle that's globally good for a global brand. And the situation that we kind of find ourselves in is we're trying to fight that. There's kickback and there's holdback at that. And so I want to be a part of the good side of history where we take this thing truly global. And because as long as I've been going racing in the US, and for me, I love that. Like I hold 2 passports. As a child, I'm an Australian. As an adult, I'm an American. And that's my life, and I love America. I love American Supercross. It was my dream. But I think the ceiling's been met. And so for 20 individuals in the lights class and the 450 class, I think this is really important that there's a new ceiling that gets to go all over the world. And it doesn't need to be against, he said, she said kind of thing. And I just embrace, World Supercross at this point. And I love it. And I love that we have our champion, here participating. And again, short term, long term, this doesn't affect my life. It's just something that I'm proud to be a part of.
Eli?
Yeah, I mean, just the opportunity of being international. We've said it 100 times, but it's like, I know the sport has that audience, and now it's actually happening. So, yeah, hopefully it takes off. I know it's going to mean a lot to a lot of people that only get to watch us on YouTube, and on the app on their phone. So now there's going to be an opportunity to go see us in person. There's nothing like it, I'll tell you that, especially the first time you see it.
No doubt. Kenny?
And for me, maybe I only speak for myself, I don't know, but it's the thirst and the hunger for some fresh light. Like, the supercrossing over there has been very monotonous, and I feel like we hear a lot of fans complaining about stuff, and I hope that we can break it up with this, shine some fresh light. And I feel like once, this is a waiting game at this point, like once this thing kicks off and we go racing and people see the broadcast, like I'm personally, as a fan, excited to see what's different, what's new, how does it come across. And I think when people watch it, they're gonna realize, like, holy crap, it is really refreshing to have some other people, other racers, and a different approach at doing stuff. So, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but that's at least what I'm super excited for.
The more mainstream approach, I think, is what's exciting. I think that I've been fortunate to be a big part of WSX.tv, and I think the interaction that fans are going to get and achieve, I can promise you right now, my motorcycle has 2 cameras that I've heard about for 20 plus years, but yet it's on my motorcycle before I even, get to ride it. And I just think that that's cool that you're going to be able to interact with the app, like, the world and football and stick and ball sports and things like that, car sports, so many things that it's all interactive now. And I think that people that can go on and click on my motorcycle and see live footage of me riding from the front and out the rear, I think that that's just unique, and short term, I get to provide that service, but long term, I'm excited to be able to click on Eli or Kenny's bike and see where they're going, whether it be from a fan aspect or as a racer. I'm like, oh, okay, why is he so good here? Why is he taking this line? And so I just think that for the sport, it's taking a really cool turn, and I'm excited.
Well, gentlemen, thanks for your time. Best of luck at the British GP.